Yeah, so welcome to the Hackathon Prep Workshop. So basically, if you don't know already, we're part of the Computer Science Club. So there's links there to the Instagram page and our website. And also we have a Duck Lounge, which is basically like a student lounge where a bunch of people like to hang out. Firstly, the Ghana acknowledgement. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the Ghana people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we get on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Ghana people to the country, and respect and value the past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and the cultural beliefs. So this hackathon will basically cover creating ideas all the way to the demo. So it will include how to come up with a good idea for a hackathon, how to design and make a good plan so you know what to do, some of the actual tips on how to actually build your project, and there's optional part of deployment, which is always, I guess, a bonus for hackathons, as well as how to actually submit and demo your project. So starting with some introduction stuff. So what is a hackathon? So hackathons are basically just time box events, typically around like 24 hours or 72 hours, to make like a prototype or MVP of a project. And it's generally in small teams, like 3 to 5, where basically a bunch of developers, designers, and thinkers. Another thing similar to this is game jams, which is kind of similar but more focused to making video games. And of course, it's the MVP focus. So it's demonstrating the core value of the project, not a fully polished product that you can sell on the like an app store or make it public. And hackathons are generally meant to be competitive and fun. They usually have a bunch of cool prizes, and you can make teams and have a bunch of fun as well. And it's generally judged on impact, creativity, and execution. And most of these hackathons are driven on the demos you make. So the projects either showcase live, or sometimes they have a video that you have to make it and then submit it. So there's a few different types of hackathons. So some of them include themed hackathons. So these can be like industry or tech specific. So quite recently there's lots of AI and blockchain hackathons happening, as well as some in like health or specific tools. So like recently there was one for making Google Chrome extensions and using some Google APIs and Google Gemini with that. So there's those kind of things. There's also more like general open hackathons, where there's no like any limit on the idea. So you can do basically what you want. There's also corporate or internal hackathons, which mainly like big tech companies do, try to get like innovative new solutions for company use. And there's also a bunch of virtual hackathons, which are fully online and are generally open to the whole world. And most of these hackathons are run on this website called Devpost. You can see here, open it up on here. So this is Devpost. So there's a bunch of online hackathons. You can see a bunch of big companies like Microsoft, Google, Meta use them. So there's a bunch of online ones happening right now. So there's like some, the Google one I mentioned, and there's a bunch of different teams. Most of them, of course, are beginner friendly. And there's also like a bunch of ones open-ended education. There's some online ones. There's in-person ones. We can't be there, and that's in the US. But if you go on one of these, for example, they generally have like a deadline. Tells you if it's online, if it's public, how much the total prize pool it is. And there's also some tags to help you identify the type of hackathon it is. And they also have a bunch of like descriptions, some of the things you can build, better list of prizes. Sometimes there's a list of judges as well. And most importantly is this judging criteria, which varies from hackathon to hackathon. But generally like pretty similar. And also on this platform, if you submit a project, you can see here, you can also see I guess all the people involved in a hackathon. Generally, there's also some extra rules in the project gallery. It happens for like when a hackathon is finished, and there's also like an updates and discussions which they may use. So this is an example of UniHack, which is one of the main ones for Australia for mainly university students. So you can see this one's already finished. So you can see the project gallery. So there's a bunch of different projects here that different people across Australia have made. So for example, there's some here. Most of them generally have a video. I'll talk more about this in the demo stage, but they have a description of all the things they've done, and then you can leave comments, which is another, and likes. And they also have links to the GitHub page and a deployed version of the website, which is nice. And there's just like a 3D garden running on the web, which is nice. So why would you want to participate in a hackathon? So the main benefit of joining hackathons is you can learn things really quickly, mainly because of this short time limit. You get exposure to new tools, frameworks, and APIs under the real pressure of this short time limit. You can also use these projects to build a portfolio. So you can ship mostly working projects, hopefully, and then you can add it to your resume on LinkedIn. It's also good to talk about in behavioral interviews. You can talk about working in a team, working under pressure, so that's always good to add. It's also good for networking, so you can meet other participants in the hackathon. Sometimes there's mentors, depending on the hackathon, as well as industry, who are generally like the judges. So that's always good, and you can get some more LinkedIn connections there. You can also, it's a good chance to experiment with new ideas and create new things. So you have the freedom to test new ideas quickly. Since it's only like a couple of days, you can try making a new project. And then there's of course the recognition and prizes. It's optional, but it's a great bonus if you manage to win a prize at the end of the hackathon. And so there's a bunch of different famous apps that started in hackathons. So these are basically big like things like Tinder, Twitter, and Zapier. They're like MVPs basically started off in a hackathon. And I think even Hollow Knight started as a game jam project. The original version of it was like Hungry Night. It was just like a flash game. So even like games and other projects I use every day started off during hackathons, which is pretty cool. So hackathon mindset. So basically in a hackathon you have to learn how to fail fast and learn faster. So basically you want to make sure your MVP, you have to focus on that rather than perfecting every element of your project. So you have to make sure you have to working demos that you can actually show to the judges or in the video. And you want to focus on that rather than having a bunch of unfinished features which you can't really demonstrate that it works. So one of the main tips is to leverage existing tools rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. So there's a bunch of templates for like websites, for apps you can use on GitHub. So you can just use those tools, and there's also a bunch of like libraries. I'll mention more later on. And also a good thing is to document early. So especially with the README file, make sure you have everything set up there on how to set up a project, and also keep a log of any like challenges you encountered or any like pivots you made. If something didn't go well, make sure you log that down, because that helps with the Devpost and the demo submissions, so you can have something to talk about there. And also you have to always keep in mind you have to try to focus on the demo. So making a working demo, you can show what you've done. So you have to build with that final pitch in mind. And generally, especially if it's like only 2 days, 1 or 2 days, you often get less sleep. So most people have energy drinks for that. So be prepared for that. So the typical hackathon workflow, there's generally 5 stages. 4th one is optional. So you start off with ideation, so coming up with an idea, so brainstorming, trying to filter out which one's good, and then pick one that's actually feasible to do within the time constraints. And then you have design and planning, so you have to sketch the user experience, all the different user flows, define the MVP that you want to make, assign rules in your team, choose the different tools and tech stack you want to use. There's the building, so it's implementing actual core features, and then making all the code for that, and making sure you test frequently to make sure it actually works. And then you have to try to iterate fast, since you only have a few days. You want to make sure you make consistent progress. And then deployment is optional, but it's generally good to have a working demo you can show to the public. But you can prepare your project to share with others to access, so either a website or a mobile app. Mobile app's kind of hard, but hardware setup, if you're doing it in our upcoming hackathon, you can probably easier to take a video actually. But if there's some way you can set it up as a hardware project to show, that would be cool. And then finally the submission and demo, which is the most important thing. So you have to make sure you complete the Devpost submission, Devpost. So all these hackathons generally use Devpost, including our upcoming hackathon. So you have to make sure you use that, and then you have to make a video. So I'll talk more about all these stages in this workshop. So starting off with ideation. So main goal of the stage is to generate creative ideas, and that's actually doable within the time constraints. And you have to focus on problems you can realistically solve. So you're probably not going to make an AI that magically solves every single problem in the world. That's just not going to happen. So you have to basically try to find something you can actually do, but not too basic. So you don't want to make it just a simple web app, but if you can combine that with AI somehow, make it more fun, have some little graphics that move, that's probably a better idea. But in my opinion, it's better to make a project that kind of solves one of your own problems that you experience. So that gets something, even if you don't win a prize, you can kind of still use a project, and then you can expand upon it later on after the hackathon as well. And yeah, of course, to aim for a demo-ready MVP. You don't have to have a perfect product when you submit, but you can still work on your project afterwards if you want to as well. So if you think your project is interesting, you can probably work on it more. If you think you can monetize it, you can probably try, if it's a mobile app, for example, you can try improving it, polishing it some more, and then you can probably release it to the App Store if you want. And also the main thing for these hackathons is try to align idea with the judging criteria. And also if there's a theme, make sure your idea matches the theme as well. So there's some different brainstorming techniques you can use. So like I mentioned before, try to find a problem you experience. So any pain points or inefficiencies. For example, with the uni's timetabling software, that's kind of how my timetable software came to be, because we had issues with the timetable. It made hundreds of different combinations of timetables for your uni schedule, and it wasn't usable basically. So we made, me and some others made a software, my timetable. Hopefully some of you know of it, but it's basically drag and drop, and it's way easier to use than whatever the uni's using. So that's probably the best thing to do, think of a problem and then come up with a solution to it. You can also come up with things like how might we, and then try to reframe problems into different solution questions. You can also do things like Crazy 8, so not the card game, but it's instead sketching 8 variations of different prototypes or projects in 8 minutes. So that's more useful if you're in person and then have a team. You can also do reverse thinking, so imagine how to make a problem worse and then try to flip it. And also, like I mentioned before, you can do mashups of things, so you can do 2 unrelated ideas. So you can do things like Tinder and then fitness. That's always an option. And then you can also, if you're really stuck, You can search online or use AI tools to help come up with ideas. Although most of these ideas are probably going to be pretty generic and not unique, so probably wouldn't be my recommendation. But if you're really stuck on the day, you could use that. And now, evaluating feasibility. So the main things you have to consider is the time constraints. So can the main core functionality of project be done in less than a day? So you have to try to get the main thing done in, for example, if you have a 2-day hackathon, you have to get the main working code done in a day. So you have the second day to basically polish it, make the video, and then do all the submissions for it. And then team skills, you have to make sure the people in your team actually know the tech stack you're using. So if you're making a website and using React, does your team know React? You have to know all these things. It's a bonus to know these things beforehand, so you don't have to spend time during the hackathon time learning how to use them. So if you really want to learn like React, for example, you can do some learning before the hackathon. You can also have a look at the CS Club hackathon. No, sorry, the CS Club React workshop we held earlier. There's a bunch of workshops for GitHub, Intro to Web Dev, React. So you can have a look at those as well if you want to make a website. That's also I mentioned earlier, resources. So the APIs and libraries and hardware available that you need. So if you're using AI, do you have access to different like OpenAI credits, or are you willing to pay some, allocate some money to use those credits? Or if you're making a hardware project, do you have like a Raspberry Pi to actually run the thing on? And also demoability. So can you actually show your project in under 3 minutes? So if your project is really complex, it's probably not gonna go well in the judging. So if you want to have it, you basically want your project to be done in, be able to demonstrate the core features and be engaging in that 3-minute video. The 3 minutes is just for, I guess, for our hackathon. The exact time can vary depending on the specific hackathon you're doing. And also, like I mentioned before, you might have to pivot. So you have to see if you somehow run out of time, you can't manage to actually do all the things you wanted to do in the first place. Is there a simpler version of the project? So for example, you may have to just cut some features you didn't have time to do, or you may have to pivot and then try to do something totally different. So idea selection. So basically when you're thinking of ideas, you want to score them on some, ideally the judging criteria. So for example, and there's also feasibility, demoability, alignment with team, if the hackathon has one, impact, so impact on society, if they can actually, if other people would actually want to use your project, as well as originality, if it's some unique project rather than another like ChatGPT wrapper. Another thing is also if it's fun to make for the team. That's also a bonus. So ideally you'll pick, during the stage, you pick your top idea, or if you really like picking between two, that's fine. But ideally you want to choose the exact one you're doing as soon as possible. And for those doing SEP, you can make some user stories for clarity, and that's optional, but generally it's good to at least think of how the user would interact with your project. So ideally like 3 to 5 user stories, or at least some dot points where you can clearly define what you want to accomplish for your project and how the user would interact with it. So like I mentioned before, these are the Devpost from the UniHack. So the one on the left is 2025, and the one on the right is 2024. So there's a bunch, these are basically the winners, and ones who got first are like the top ones. And then there's a bunch of like separate prizes for UniHack. But basically you can see here, they're quite different. So some of them, like I mentioned, the one before is like a 3D, like 3D like globe garden on website. One is like some AI card game thing. One's like an app. There's a bunch of AI powered fatigue detection, and some there's more meme ones, I guess. So there's a bunch of different projects you can do. Totally up to you what you end up doing. But yeah, some general tips. Ideally, keep it small. So it's better to have one interesting feature or one or two rather than having a bunch of half-done features. You can always add, if you have time, you can add on and add more features, but just focus on the core essential ones first. And ideally, you want to try to reuse existing tools. So again, APIs, libraries, and templates, make use of them. You don't want to do stuff from scratch. And also think about the demo first. So what will wow the judges in 3 minutes? Another Reddit app probably won't. So try to think of something that will impress them, something that's more creative. And again, the scope control, you have to look at the must-have versus the nice-have features and try to focus on making things that you actually need. And then, most importantly, try to have fun during the hackathon. Obviously, you're going to be a bit stressed, but try to make something, try to decide on an idea that your team is excited to build. So design and planning. So the main goal of this stage is to basically define MVP. So basically the smallest product demonstrating value, and then try to plan the features, tasks, and roles for your team, ideally for fast execution. So basically there's a bunch of different tools you can use in tech stack, which you have to decide, and hopefully that matches your team skills, or like I mentioned before, try to get some do some extra training beforehand or research to learn those skills. And then you can also use different sketches to make the user flows or system architecture, or you can also use tools like Figma, which I'll tell you more later. Also try to reduce wasted effort by planning before actually doing the coding and building, especially when you're working in a team. You don't want to be coding up the same thing, same feature between like two people. That's just wasting time and effort. So ideally plan and allocate these tasks beforehand. So task breakdown. So ideally, for example, you can have a GitHub project. You can see it's the one for the Computer Science Club website repo. And there's a bunch of like tasks. So you can split your project into small tasks that you can actually manage. So some of the examples can be like core features or functionality. For example, like making a basic website, like adding the template, adding like a home page, adding an about page. Also things like you can prototype the UI or setting up the hardware, or things like data collection or data set pre-processing for more like AI things, or like also like testing, validation, demo prep, and then general, not so much code related, is also like documentation as well as doing the Devpost write-up. So yeah, you can use GitHub projects, that's like free. You can also use other things like Trello or Jira, although there's like limits to that, but it should be fine for like a small team. It's up to you which specific one you use, but generally if you use one of these, it's better than like doing it, allocating tasks in person and then forgetting about who is doing what. So try to have some system in place where you can easily assign tasks to people and have a backlog of all the tasks you need to do for the project. And again, make sure you assign tasks based on team skills. So if someone doesn't know how to do front end, probably don't assign them to front end tasks. Although if there's no one in the team who knows how to do front end, probably try to get some knowledge or skills like beforehand before you do it. So the actual tech stack is basically up to you. There's a bunch of different tools out there, but try to select one for speed and feasibility, especially for doing it during the hackathon period. So for example, for software, you can choose things like programming languages, like you can use JavaScript, Python, there's a bunch of frameworks. So for web dev, you can do like React, Angular, Vue, there's different libraries you can use. For hardware, you may think about different microcontrollers, sensors, prototyping kits, data. For AI and data, there's like AI APIs, frameworks, and other cloud compute resources. And then you have to also think if you want to make it cross-platform. So you can make it directly, depending on what tech stack you use. You can target the desktop directly, so like things with .NET for Windows, or you can do something like React Native, where you can do the main writing in React, so more like a web dev with JavaScript, and then you can target native, mobile, and desktop or web using that same code. So that's another thing to think of. And also try to balance learning opportunity versus project completion. So ideally, you don't want to be learning a completely new language, but if you're using something like a new library you haven't used before, it's always a good chance during a hackathon to learn how to use it, how to apply it to an actual project. But try to make sure you balance that with how much time it's going to take to learn that new tool or language, given that the hackathon is only a limited time. So there's some more ideas, specific ideas for each type of project. So there's like website, like different front end or back end. For example, like I mentioned before, you can use like tools like your UI, Material UI, or ShadCN, which is just like pre-built components for like making websites. So as a way to save time, you can use these pre-built components rather than making stuff from scratch. So most of these hackathon projects, especially in UniHack, they use these tools to basically save time and make really good projects in the end. There's a bunch more examples for mobile apps, desktop apps, more AI stuff, hardware. You can make a game if you want as well. If someone can make the next Hollow Knight or Silksong, that would be good. But yeah, try to prefer tools the team already knows, and then of course use libraries or APIs and templates to speed up development. So UI and UX planning. So during the stage, try to focus on the core user flows. So how the person would actually interact with your app or project. So ideally in like 3 to 5 screens or steps. So try to keep the interaction simple and intuitive. So if you have a close button, try to have like an X or something more that you're used to. Don't make it like an O that's for some reason different. So try to make it what a normal user would understand. And also try to consider accessibility. So things like contrast, font size, keyboard or gamepad controls. It's a bit harder to do it within the hackathon time load, but if you can consider those things, that's a bonus. So you can also decide what feedback is essential, whether it be like a prompt confirming the user submitted their membership or something, or like visual, some audio cues, or like LED lights flashing or notifications, depending on what you choose to do. So having that feedback to the user and making sure you note noted down is good. And then also make sure you annotate the inputs and outputs and all the different interactions, so the team knows what actually to build. So most people use Figma, which is basically allows you to make these mock-ups here. So ideally, you can probably just start off by making some rough paper sketches or wireframes to have a rough idea of what your project would look like. You can also have like key screens or interfaces for software, or if you're doing something like hardware related, you can have like schematic diagrams for that. You can also have like components. You can see in here, there's different components for like the different FAQs and buttons and headers to speed up making these designs. So you can just drag and drop once you build these components. So here's an example. So if you open Figma, it has like like it drops and projects and stuff. Generally, you want to make a new design. So if you click that, it takes you to a new file. It looks blank, but basically, if you want to make it darker, you can change the background color something more darker, and then you basically have these things called frames. So basically, those are like pages. Generally, they can be any size really, but if you're like targeting a website, for example, it's good to try to match the dimensions, so like width and height, to like a monitor size. Or like if you're doing a mobile app, you can try to use a frame size as a phone dimensions. So you can make these frames, and the frames are basically like new pages or new elements of your app. And so here you can like draw rectangles, and there's a bunch of different shapes. You can draw lines, and then you can just use the controls. You can like drag it around. You can add rounded corners to everything, because most of these projects like rounded corners. So you just have to drag that in, and then you can resize it, rotate. You can add text, really small text, but by default it has this like text box. So actually, to increase the text size, you have to go to the right sidebar and then change the font size. And then you can change the things like the fonts, the actual like styling for it. You can also change like for shapes, you can change the color. There's a bunch of like the outline, like stroke. And then there's a bunch of effects you can do, so like things like drop shadow, texture, noise. And then you can also export your frame as a PNG. So if you like want to store all these ideas outside of Figma, you can copy this. So if you have a planning document, for example, you can copy these images to that document. You can also like import images as well if you want. You can also leave comments. If you're like working together in your team, you can leave comments to say that's good. Ideally, you'll probably be in person though, so you can just communicate directly. So here is what we had for the CS Club website Figma. So this we haven't really used since like the start of the website, but you can see here there's like the general like homepage for it. So you can see we have like the header here, we have all the buttons, and we have like image, we have like upcoming events, and then we have like about page, all the different components. And then here you can see like the mobile view for it, and then some of the components we made, so like the header, buttons, all are here, as well as like a color palette. So that's one example. Another one, you can have a look. There's a bunch of different templates on Figma you can download. So most people use these when they're making mockups. So this one's like the iOS and iPadOS UI kit basically for Figma. So it has like all the things you need if you're developing apps basically. So there's things like different colors for like the iOS, and then different materials like with the new liquid glass material that they made, different fonts, device bezels, different more components for each thing. So for example, if you're making an app, using one of these to help design all the components, and then just drag and drop all the components is a good idea. And they have basically everything, all the different components, all the menus you can think of are here, at least for this iOS one. If you're using a website, if you're using something like Hero UI, they have like a Figma file as well. So you can use that as well to help make your components quickly and make a mock-up in Figma. And you can also get access to some of the pro features for free as part of the Figma education. So basically, if you just make an account using your student email, so your uni email, and then you go to that link, and then you just have to verify your student. I think it's just like clicking on an email, just clicking verify button, and then you have access to some of the pro features. So this is a website, so you just have to go get verified and then follow the steps. So some other things they have is FigJam, so that's more for online whiteboard, more for brainstorming. You can also, that allows you to have more teams, so you can assign projects to different teams, so you can collaborate on projects together. There's also this thing called dev mode. So it's basically useful if you're making like a mobile app or website. So you can go to this design and Figma, and then you click on that, and it shows you like the different dimensions, so like the padding, border. So you can easily copy and paste that into whatever language you're using. And then they have some other features as well. Yeah, so you don't have to use Figma, but it's generally good if you're especially making a website or mobile app. But otherwise, just normal like hand-drawn pencil sketches is always a good idea, just so you know have some idea of what your project's gonna look like. So some just general design and planning tips. Keep the MVP small and actionable. Identify the must-have versus nice-to-have features. Document all your assumptions, so assuming you have some credits for OpenAI or something, hardware constraints, so if you have some like machine AI like model you have to train, you might have to mention you have to use CUDA, so you have to have an NVIDIA graphics card, and also mention all the dependencies and all the different tools you use, and also decide on the team roles early. So you have to decide who codes, who is doing the like designing on like Figma, who's doing like all the testing, who's making the demos, the video demo, who's doing the Devpost submission. So deciding on this early on is better, so you don't have to panic last minute when the submission is like nearly due, who's doing what. And of course, like planning the demo part first, so ensuring the prototype is presentable. Even if it's not fully complete, so try to make it sort of presentable. So even if that means like skipping some features or kind of making some like hacky solutions. So for example, if the authentication is not working, you might just have to hard code a user or something. Just make sure you mention that given like time constraints, you have to make some shortcuts like that. And also, just if it's beneficial if you're familiar with the tech stack before starting actual like, coding for the hackathon. So the main goal of the building stage is to implement the core features of your MVP, and ideally you want to test and iterate quickly to ensure the demo readiness. And ideally you want to have some clean code and organized like hardware or software setup. And optionally, if you want to have a public demo or public deployment, you want to try to prepare for that in a stage. And of course, you want to collaborate effectively, so using things like Git and GitHub to manage all the different pull requests within the team. So the general development workflow is, like I mentioned before, breaking tasks into small units. So implementing feature by feature, and then making like a new pull request on GitHub, and then merging that to main, and then working in parallel when possible. So obviously if you're in a team, there'll be different components. So for example, for a website, you might have like a front end or UI making, and there's a back end with some data. So you want to have people working on different components where they aren't like dependent on one feature being done first. Because if you're dependent on that, there'll be like one person doing a task, and then the whole team would be just waiting for them to finish that, and that's not ideal. So ideally, everyone would be working on a feature at the same time, and then you can use Git and GitHub to merge all the code together. And yeah, of course, you have to iterate frequently, so try to build small working increments. So don't try to make one giant pull request at the end, because that's not going to end well with all the merge conflicts. And of course, try to test as you go. So either if it's like a website, try to have a development window so you can have the website preview, or if it's like a hardware, make sure you try to test your code physically. Try to verify it actually works, what you have so far, and try like different input and outputs, like different user flows, so you don't have to test at the end. Another thing when you're making the code is to try to follow consistent naming conventions. So things like variables, functions, components, modules. You can do things like, depending on what language you use, you can use like a snake case or a camel case, up to you, but try to just be consistent with that. And also try to have a clear folder and project structure. So ideally you don't want to have one giant JavaScript file for your code. That's not gonna be ideal. So you want to have like separate folders, separate files, and try to make it a modular setup. And you can also use things like linting and formatting tools to automatically check for and apply formatting checks. So you can easily set it up depending on the language or frameworks you use, but they basically just save a bunch of time, try to make your code consistent. And you can also, of course, leaving comments, especially if you're working in a team, leaving comments so other people know how your code works, or if you're like doing something hardware and then taking the wiring or circuit diagrams. You can also try to apply design standards for UI. So if you're making a button, for example, you ideally want to have some consistent colors. You don't want like 100 different colors on your website. The user and judges probably won't appreciate that if it's really complicated and not visually aesthetic. So try to have some kind of standard, or if you're doing something hardware, something similar for that. Documentation, so try to document your core features and setup. So basically how to run your software, all your scripts, or like the builds. If it's hardware, like how to assemble the different wiring setup, or like any dependencies you might need, like API, or like any physical hardware you need, or any assets you use. So generally you would have like a README example here. So it just tells you how you would get started, how to get a code running on your local device, as well as like any tech stack you might use. It's generally useful for your team reference as well as your Devpost submission, which we'll do later. So just some general tips for building. Try to focus on the must-have features first, and then you can do extra features only if the time permits. Try to reuse libraries, APIs, and templates instead of reinventing the wheel. For hardware, you can probably test different modules separately before integrating. And AI and more the data science, I guess, validate a pipeline on a small sample data set first before doing like a larger one. And of course, try to use some kind of source control. So GitHub is a good example. So try to maintain frequent commits and having like small pull requests rather than leaving it to like a giant pull request. And that's probably hard to review for other people in your team. And also having all these commits is also a form of backup. So in case your laptop dies and you don't have access to it or something corrupts, you have that backup on GitHub in case something goes wrong. And also the other team members have access to your code as well. So making sure you have these small pull requests and commit to main is good. Now the deployment stage is typically optional, but it's generally good to have if you're doing a hackathon. So generally video or like live demo on your own laptop is often enough, but especially if you want to show it on your resume or like LinkedIn, having like some kind of public deployed website or some way you can demonstrate your code publicly is always nice. And it's also a good way to impress the judges if you manage to deploy your project. And that's also a bonus. But ideally, try to make it easy to show and test your project, and then always focus on actually making a working demo and making sure that's reliable and having the features done before trying to deploy and making a production grade setup. So there's a bunch of different hosting options depending on what type of project you decide to do. But generally, there's things like if you're doing web, you can do like GitHub Pages, which is like free if you get a GitHub Pro. And there's like Vercel. If you're making a mobile app, it's kind of harder since you often need to pay for testing it. But you can deploy it to your device locally. Desktop apps is more easier. You can just share the binaries. Python and data science, you can share like the notebook you use. Hardware is a bit harder because you have to be in person, but basically always don't focus on deployment as your demo. Just focus on your actual demo video and having screenshots of your project working locally, and then deployment is always like a extra step you can do. Also, as students, you have access to the GitHub Student Developer Pack, which gives you access to a bunch of cool things, including a free GitHub Pro subscription, as well as a bunch of free domains. So most of them are like for 1 year. So if you want to deploy a website, you can get a domain from them, and then you can use that. And there's also a bunch of different like software and tools you can get access to. So there's things like for logging, like errors, that's more so for more production grade, I guess. But there's also things like Azure credits and other cool software and like AI stuff you can use. The CI/CD workflow, generally probably won't have time in a hackathon, but if you do decide to do this, you can probably use a template and create that beforehand. But most people just use a GitHub or GitHub Actions, and it's really good for like automated builds. So if each person's like on a different laptop, if you're like on a Mac, on a Windows, on a Linux machine, and you want to build a common like Windows executable, using GitHub Actions is a good way to make that executable. And I think it also supports macOS runners, so you can use like Xcode and then use the GitHub Actions to make your project in the cloud, basically. So you don't have to have a physical Mac to create that project. Although if you're doing Mac, you probably still need Xcode for like testing it locally. And also GitHub Actions can do things like code formatting and linting checks, and also some quick checks you can do as well. And so the main benefits of doing this is it saves times on manual builds and ensures consistent output demos. This, like I mentioned before, is a bonus, I guess, but it's good for Devpost credibility, and especially for resumes and LinkedIn's. If you can say you managed to make a proper CI/CD workflow, and that's always a bonus. Depending on what exact project you use, you may have to use Docker. So Docker is basically just a way to package your project and make a consistent environment across machines. So for example, it's useful if you have complex dependencies. For example, if you have a different front end and then a different back end and have some kind of like API, like caching services, for example, you may want a better way to like manage this rather than manually trying to start it up on your machine. So you basically want to make reproducible builds. So the main two files for Docker is the Docker file, which defines the environment, so all the build steps, and then the Docker Compose YAML file, which allows you to manage like multiple services. So you can pull the different images from the Docker repository. So things you can pull like the engines for like or you can do like Ubuntu or Redis or something. Or you can do like SQLite, Postgres. So you can manage all these things. You just have to pull it, and then you can start a service. And then you can also, in that Docker Compose, you can start like a network, and then it basically allows your containers to talk to each other. But again, Docker is like helpful, but not always needed, especially for these hackathon projects. Basically, only use it if your team is familiar and you're doing something more complex. So it's just some general deployment tips. Try not to overcomplicate it. Working demo is more important than having a working deployment. And always, like if you're trying to focus on the deployment, just make sure you have a local demo fallback in case the deployment fails. And make sure if you're having a website, make sure you have some instructions that are really clear for the judges. So things like open a link, click the button. So this would be instructions on Devpost submission, and try to like use free hosting or trial credits, like through the GitHub student pack. Don't like spend too much of your own money on this, especially for just such a short project. For a hackathon, don't waste too much time on the actual infrastructure setup. Try to use like examples if you want to get it running, or like you can just copy and paste most of the time. So submission demo, most important stage. So you have to, as part of the hackathon, for most general ones and upcoming hackathon included, you'll have to make your code public, so you can use like GitHub or GitLab or whatever source control thing you use, basically as a way to make your code transparent and judges can review it as well, mainly to check if there's if you made like commits before the actual hackathon started. That's the main thing we'll check for. And also you have to prepare a short demo video up to 3 minutes for showing your project in action. So showing all the key features, anything interesting. You can talk about like obstacles you have to overcome like in your video, in the voice over. And you also have to complete the Devpost submission before the deadline. So you have to make sure you include all those things for that. And then most importantly, you have to ensure your judges can understand and experience your project easily. So you have to have some really clear like readmes, really clear like videos. You don't want anything like too technical. So for the demo video, you don't want it focusing on like just screen sharing the code. You want something more visual and more engaging. So for our hackathon, there's judging criteria. So it's pretty similar between other hackathons, but mainly there's 5 areas here. So there's polish, design, and execution. So how, like whether your MVP actually works, and the technical implementation and functionality. If there's like any bugs or lack of bugs, sorry, and if the user experience is like smooth, it's nice to use. Originality and creativity, if your idea is like unique or innovative approach, and also especially for video, if you add some creative or funny elements to that, that's always a bonus. Alignment with theme, if our hackathon will be having a theme, which will be announced on the day, but you have to basically try to follow that theme during the hackathon. So you have to see how closely the project aligns with that, and relevance, if there's like a challenge statement associated with that, and how usable the project is. So if it's actually easy to use for a website or like a mobile app, you can actually like use it, navigate it pretty easy. And also impact and potential. So if your project is like another Reddit app, it's probably not going to be that not going to be having that much of an impact. But if it's something more useful, that's also a really good project. That's generally, if your project has a good impact or potential, it's probably worthwhile trying to explore further, develop further, and then try to make some kind of make it public. So like make your deploy your product and then add it to like an app store or like deploy it publicly for other people to use. So I mentioned this before, so Devpost. So during the submission, you have to include a video link. So generally you can just have like a YouTube link, and just make sure it's at least public during the, or like unlisted, at least during the period of the hackathon, during the judging time. So some things you can add in the Devpost, like text, is like inspiration behind the project, what your project does, or like what problem it solves, alignment with the hackathon theme, how it was built, so either the tech stack and the approach you used, any challenges you faced and how you overcame them, as well as like any accomplishments your team is proud of, as well as like any lessons that you learned and any like next steps if you want to like make a project better. And then you can also in Devpost leave comments as well. Some of them are funny, I guess. And then you can also like other people projects on Devpost and leave comments. So in the Devpost submission, there'll also be an option, you have to include a link to that code link. So make sure you do this inside the Devpost submission as well. And if you have like a deployed website, you can add a link to that in there as well. And then when we have everything set up, there'll be like a Devpost page. So like I showed you before, you just have to click on join hackathon on the Devpost side, and then there'll be some like information you have to fill, and then you have to do the project submission, and then hopefully later on we'll set it up so there'll be like a photo project gallery, so you can see what everyone else has made as well. And the demo video, so it's a maximum of 3 minutes for our hackathon. So generally some content you can include is like your idea origin, so how you thought of the idea, so what are your thought process as well for that. Some of the like the target audience is specifically for like people who scroll reels all day, doom scrolls or something, or is it specifically for someone who needs like accessibility, try to focus on that instead, as well as like any real world application. So if something like benefits a certain, makes it like some benefit using your project, make sure you mention that. So it aligns with like the judging criteria. Also like an actual demonstration of your application and prototype. Make sure it includes all the key features. Try to have it more like a visual thing rather than like screen sharing the code. And also like any implementation highlights, so any like tech you use or hardware software you used, anything you thought that was interesting. So generally for the video, you can have a look at examples from the UniHack Devpost, but you can try to add some like humor in it is always a bonus. Try to make it more engaging and fun. You can use like whatever tool you want to edit the videos. So you can add some like effects or like sound effects to try to make it more interesting. And yeah, try to make it clear, concise, and engaging the video. And some just general submission tips. Try to submit early to avoid last minute stress. So Devpost, you can create actual project submission early, and you can make edits until a deadline. So that's always the best thing to do. And make sure you ensure your GitHub repo is public and documented with a README file for all the setup. And also try to prepare screenshots or visuals for Devpost. So in Devpost, like I mentioned before, if you go back to the project gallery, there's like these thumbnails for the projects. So you can see the winners generally have good thumbnails, some of them not as good. Yeah, so try to make something that's a bit better, but don't spend too much time on designing that. Try to focus on your main project. Yeah, and try to keep the demo simple and polished, and of course try to add humor. Mainly because the judges may watch, they only have a certain amount of time to look at your video, and they'll be looking at them probably like all at once, all the different videos at once. So try to make your project videos stand out, and also make sure you back up your submission, so all the code hopefully on GitHub, as well as like any planning documents and the video, and then like any screenshots. Make sure you back it up to like a cloud, just in case there's any technical issues. You don't want it like a laptop dying 1 minute before the submission and then you can't submit. So make sure the backups are there. And that's all the content from this workshop. And if you have any feedback, you can scan the QR code there. I think the pizzas are here, but before that, is there any questions anyone had? Like anything in general about hackathons, or any like making projects in general? Can answer some questions about the upcoming CS Club and UPC Hackathon. For that hackathon, there will be some more information sent out in the coming week or weeks. So there'll be some FAQs, some common questions, and some answers to them, as well as like a event timeline and some rules. So there'll be more information for that coming soon. So was there any questions? Yeah.
When is the theme of the hackathon gets available to the public?
So for our hackathon, will be announced on the day. So there'll be like a opening ceremony. So during that, will be announced. Yeah.
Sleep.
Sleep.
Do people usually just like crash or?
I mean, it's optional.
Okay.
I mean, if you want, you can always sleep, of course. Try to get some sleep rather than staying up the whole time. But some people just try to stay up all night working on a project. Up to you. Yeah.
Will we have a venue 24 hours if we don't want to sleep?
So for our hackathon, there will be, it's in the Nexus building, so that will be open overnight technically, so you can stay there if you want, but you can always feel free to go back home, work on it, or if your group, you can meet up elsewhere in uni or at home or something. It's up to you. You just have to be there on the day at the start to make sure you like check in and make sure everything's set up properly, and for the opening ceremony. And then apart from that, just try to make sure you, even if it's a submission, probably you want to be in person if you have any questions or any issues that arise. But just make sure, so like start and end is basically when you have to be there in person. Otherwise it can be like online as well.